Happy Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for taking time to join us on this long holiday weekend. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. My name is LB. Any pronouns work for me: he, him, his, she, her, hers, they, them, theirs. The gender terms ma'am or miss or lady don't work for me, and I often joke that 90% of the reason I pursued a PhD is the gender neutral honorific of doctor. So that works too. It's been a little while since I've had the honor to co-lead service. I'm delighted to be back up here today with Stephanie this morning, who you'll hear from. Thank you for coming this morning to the Circle of Caring People, journeying with curiosity. May we find meaning together wherever you are on your journey of finding truth and meaning. Whether you've arrived joyous or with a heavy heart, we're grateful you have chosen to be here with us this morning. I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts when in the car, like many of us. Recently, I was driving to a meeting with a client, listening to an episode of Prentice Hemphill's podcast, Becoming the People. The episode was named Alleluia and featured an interview with co-director of the Carolina Federation and community strategist Sandolo Diamina. In this episode, Sandola says, you look at the ending of long civilizations, Chinese Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire, like those declines were hundreds of years long. So what does it mean to be in this moment? He continues, my sense is the whole civilizational project of European modernity, of colonialism comparatively, isn't that old, but it's hundreds of years old and it's coming to an end. It's coming apart. He says, and it would be easy to just be like, oh, the rich people and the white people, their world is coming apart. But I think it's deeper than that. We've all been interwoven in this way of what are the deep assumptions about who we are, what we're capable of, what we're here for, how do we be together? All of those questions were churned up by colonization. And then with the collapse of not just colonization, but the resistance to it, all of these questions, what do we do now? He finishes, and so it feels like we're in a moment where there are deeper resources we need to call on. That's how I'm in this historical period. In the car, in that moment when I heard this moment of what Sandola was sharing, I had a mental mind explosion. I feel like I look like that emoji that has the top of their head exploding and their faces like this, with their head blowing off. Now, I've been fortunate enough to be open to many paradigm shifts in my lifetime, and this was one that rocked me pretty profoundly. For several years now, and especially in the last year and a half, we've been thinking about this moment as a collapse of democracy. But what Sandola is offering, if it wasn't explicitly clear, is for us to consider that we are in a moment of the collapse of colonization. Not just the demise of democracy, that might be part of it, but he's suggesting that we are in a much bigger trajectory of the end of colonization. Much like the end of the Roman Empire, end of the Chinese Empire. We are living in that moment. And when I consider that, my mind goes, poof. What if we looked at all this turmoil as a necessary part of the centuries-long work of the collapse of colonization? Rather than thinking about this moment as a moment of the loss of something good, Sandolo is asking us to consider that we are in a period of undoing of the larger system that created all of these problems that Stephanie outlined for us in the first place. I don't know about you, but when I think like that, I get a little more pep in my step, gas in my tank, and as an EV owner, more charge to my battery in the work to social change. I literally went into that client and was like, you guys, what are we doing? What if we're ending colonization? What if my job is not to diversify, not only to diversify this workplace, but what if we're ending colonization? What if? Or even as I say it outright, now I get a little hell yeah about it. So the reading that Stephanie did a beautiful job of describing colonization, and the most basic definition of colonization is the process by which a foreign power establishes control over a territory and its people, typically by sending settlers to govern, exploit resources, and impose their own culture. Colonization often involves the dispossession and subjugation of indigenous populations. And when we talk about colonization, we think about colonization in the United States and locally, we rightfully think about the displacement of the Mohawk people and all the other indigenous folks of the land. We think about it as something that existed elsewhere long before colonizers arrived in North America. We think about it in terms of the colonial period. And this feels very apt. Um, Many of you know that I grew up in Johnstown, New York, and there's a lot of colonial history that is still celebrated there, for better or for worse. And last weekend, we went to the reenactment of Sir William Johnson Hall, the kind of overtaking of Sir William Johnson Hall. But we're still teaching colonization as if it's something in the past. And while it's an old system and we tend to think about it in terms of history, we can't separate the system of colonization from racism, sexism, cis-sexism, all of those things, the glorification of wealth, and the moving target of who is considered American. Colonization is so ingrained in our systems that we often don't realize how pervasive it is in our systems and psyches. And that system of establishing control is all around us, even in new technologies. T. Wilson Dickinson is a friend of mine from when I lived in Syracuse and went to school there. He's also a theologian, minister, and organizer whose work takes place at the intersection of constructive theology, environmental justice, and social change. He teaches theology and is the director of the Doctorate of Ministry and Continuing Education programs at Lexington Theological Seminary. In the name of new technologies, he offers this analogy for us to consider the ways we are offered opportunities to witness and resist colonization in our everyday, even now. Dickinson recently wrote, "The historical analogy for AI is not the printing press, but the ship. While the ship was a technology that could have been used in many ways, the structural and strategic forces behind it made it the slave ship, the cargo ship, the naval ship. The tech barons and venture capitalists behind AI and the structures of racial capitalism that shape it are not seeking to improve our shared lives, but to grab more power and wealth. To make these ships, forests were cut down and communities, ecosystems, and ways of life were destroyed. Likewise, AI is already having devastating environmental consequences with emissions, water, and communities. Those ships were used to transport enslaved and indentured peoples to plantations and mines, and they transported those extracted resources to factories. The commons were enclosed and privatized so that the means of production could be held by a few, and the many would be so desperate and dependent that they were easily exploited. The growth of AI, he says, is being driven by the ambition that a few will own not just the means of production, but the producers themselves will be machines that can be owned. The vision is not to share this largest with all peoples, but to consolidate power. The age of the ship tried to call itself the Enlightenment. Its advocates were folks like John Locke, who spun webs about freedom being rooted in private property and spent his life as a bureaucrat writing up constitutions that instituted slavery. Likewise, AI optimists are dressing it up as a kind of intellectual freedom, but its function will be to produce and control more docile populations. He continues, we're almost done here. If you need a more immediate analogy, just look at social media. Sure, there is more connection. There's beautiful things that have come from social media. But the way it has been set up by the tech bros, however, takes your relationships and insights and intersperses them with advertising and disciplines them with the algorithm. And he says, who knows what kind of surveillance is going on in the background? I think we know what kind of surveillance is going on in the background. So he also offers, well, this is a strong analogy of things that are wrong with AI and new technologies and how it's all kind of connected in this system of colonization. He offers how we might respond. The response to this new regime is not to focus on our own privatized piety, but on our social practices and our shared visions. And he says it feels like educators are on the front line of this right now. The responses to the ship and the world it shaped also provide lessons and avenues for action. The repurposing of the ship by pirates and revolutionaries, the poetry of liberation and the people, communities of common, survival and mutual aid, the strike and the boycott of organized labor. But the first step is to call a thing what it is. This time, let's not call colonization discovery and exploitation enlightenment. That's the end of his words. I'll repeat it. This time, let's not call colonization discovery and exploitation enlightenment. Now back to me. This is my words now. What I appreciate about the last piece is that he leads with the quote, this time. And that's what stands out to me, this time. This time means that we now have the knowledge of how things went in the past. We have more information to do better and be better. This time is equipped not only with more information, but more means of connection because of social media and resources to resist the old script of colonization and power in the hands of a few for exploitation. This time we can choose something different. I'm not sure where I remember hearing this saying, but it stuck with me, that there was a time when people couldn't imagine a world without kings and queens. Yet here we are with monarchies being more symbolic in tradition than the dominant rulers they once were. There was a time when many couldn't imagine a world beyond the horrors of chattel slavery or indentured servitude. And there was a time when people couldn't imagine a world without relying on coal or gas to create power. And here we are with renewable energy increasing every year across the world. There will be a time when our descendants look back at this period of time and trace our actions to the end of colonization. That's what I want for my kids and kids and kids and kids and kids. That they're going to look back to our actions right now and be like, whoa, they did XYZ that helped XYZ that helped XYZ that ended this period of colonization. But that's really a far away. It's not going to happen in my lifetime or my kid's lifetime or my grandkids' lifetime, being a realist. So, what do we do today? If this is true that our actions today are helping to undo colonization and all of its manifestations, racism, sexism, homophobia, all of that kind of stuff, what does that mean for our present? First, we have to consider what it means to decolonize our thinking and our ways of being. In the piece Decolonizing the Mind to Change the Narrative, authors Gillian Faith Achieng, Maureen Kabasa, and Joel Anyango describe decolonization, as a broad and complex process that requires a deep understanding of our different human experiences and histories. Decolonization, at its foundation, entails undoing the legacy of colonial control, which frequently imposed Western ideology, institutions, and values on various civilizations across the world. The authors continue, the process of decolonizing one's mind extends beyond growth. As you embark on this transformative journey, you become part of a movement that aims to question and challenge the existing norms. By reshaping your thoughts and perspectives, you actively foster a society that values and celebrates diverse voices and experiences. This path entails rewriting the standing narratives that have shaped our world for so long. It is an expedition of self-discovery, empowerment, and reclaiming our identities. By acknowledging the narratives imposed upon us, we can actively strive to change them. And they finish by saying, this endeavor is not about transforming our minds. It revolves around reshaping the collective narrative of humanity. Now, this study and practice of decolonization is a much longer endeavor and should be led by Indigenous leaders and educators, which I am not. But today, I want to offer something that I learned from in terms of anti-colonial affirmations from the Sogreate Land Trust. The Sogreate Land Trust is an urban, indigenous, women-led land trust based in the San Francisco Bay Area. They facilitate the return of indigenous lands to indigenous peoples. And so, as a window, as an example of ways in which we can start to think about what it would mean to decolonize our mind and to use anti-colonial affirmations, I'm going to offer these. And these anti-colonial affirmations ask us to consider our relationship more specifically to our relationship with time. So here they are. I'm going to slow down a little bit and offer them with a little pause in between. It is a colonial lie that all things must come to an end. All life is cyclical. There are no endings, there is no death, there is only transformation. Everything is energy. Energy is infinite. There is no countdown. You have time. Your boss might not like this next one, but I'm going to say it anyway. The deadline is movable, malleable, changeable. You can move at your own pace. A sense of urgency does not always serve you. You can move slowly and with intention. You do not need to earn time for yourself. It already belongs to you. It is yours to spend on whatever you choose. The next affirmation. You are not falling behind. You are doing exactly what you need to be doing right now. Time does not govern your life. Your presence in the moment is a reclamation of your sovereignty. You are never running out of time. Time is impermanent in nature. It moves with us. You are right on time. You are not experiencing a loss of time. You are the universe experiencing itself one frame at a time. You are not meant to know what's to come. The unknown is also a promise of discovery. Every breath you take carries you forward into a new frame of existence. You are a portal. Every breath of your ancestors has served this moment. You are infinite. The lives of your ancestors are like threads in the tapestry of life. It was woven for you. You aren't too old, and there is no rush. Age is a gift. It's okay to spend time on things that feel good. You deserve joy. To reset is also to dream, to contemplate, to ground. You deserve time to dream. You are creating with every moment. Indigenous futurism requires you to build it with intention. It requires your honesty and self compassion. A new reality needs kindness, softness, reflection, and intentionality. And last but not least, liberation also means releasing the spiritual shackles that bind us to colonialism, capitalism, and suffering. Another world is possible. It is already here. What I appreciate about being part of this community is that we are committed to illuminating the present in all of its messiness. We stay laser focused on the inequities that are out of alignment with who we are as people who care about keeping love at the center. We do the work of demanding change big and small. And in the present, we work to identify and imagine a better world, not just a world without inequity, but a world that is orienting towards healing, transformation, and repair, a world that is naming and striving for not just the end of disparities, but for collective liberation. So I want you to think back to Stephanie's meditation from a little while ago, and I want you to think of something you visualized thriving, whether it was the earth or the ending of a war or the thriving of humanity. And if you can't remember that far back because we haven't had enough coffee or you're just in a different mindset than you were 20 minutes ago, conjure something up right now. Imagine something big and bold, a big, hairy, audacious goal, or my colleagues call it a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. Get your BHAG in mind. Rooted, but make sure your BHAG is rooted in collective liberation and thriving. Think beyond what we can imagine. Think without constraints. I often drive down my street and I feel sad because I can sometimes imagine um, the what it would have looked like before cars and like people and buildings, and how many more animals there would be, and how many more squirrels. I love squirrels. Theo loves squirrels. We love squirrels, and they are annoying. Schenectady squirrels are annoying. I'm not going to lie, but I also love how mischievous they are, and I sometimes can imagine just so many squirrels in my neighborhood, like thousands of them. So, anyways, I digress. Let's do some imagining right now of your big, hairy, audacious goal that is rooted not in just individual rights or what would be good for you as a person, but would serve us all well and better. Hold it and remember that we make possible what we can imagine, what we can visualize. If we can imagine that thriving, then that thriving is already here. Liberation is possible out there because it's possible here in this space, and it's possible here in our hearts and in our minds. Let us go forth and continue, as our opening quote from Naval El Sadavi said, pave the way to a better future.